exactly 127 hours and 34 minutes. That's how long the Philippines had to recover from Typhoon Fung-wong before Fung-wong made landfall. 127 hours to rescue 232 bodies, clear debris from thousands of destroyed homes, and prepare emergency shelters for the next catastrophe. It wasn't nearly enough. When Fung-wong's floods reached the villages still reeling from the previous storm, something unprecedented happened. Emergency systems designed to handle one disaster at a time simply stopped working. Rivers that had absorbed previous typhoons without major flooding suddenly turned into liquid bulldozers, demolishing 132 villages with surgical precision. Recent analysis revealed that back-to-back disasters don't just double the damage, they create entirely new failure modes that engineers never planned for. What happens to flood defences when they're hit before they can reset? And are we entering an era where disasters don't wait their turn anymore? On November the 3rd, 2025, 300 nautical miles northeast of Chuuk, satellite imagery captured what meteorologists initially dismissed as routine tropical development. But Fung-wong was different from the start. Across the Western Pacific, sea surface temperatures registered from 29 to 30 degrees Celsius, approximately 2 degrees Celsius, warmer than historical averages for November. These abnormally warm waters provided the perfect breeding ground for what would become one of the most destructive typhoons of 2025. Dr. Maria Esperanza, senior typhoon specialist at PAGASA, the Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical, and Astronomical Services Administration, noted something disturbing about Fung-wong's development pattern. The rapidity of intensification was alarming. We observed a pressure drop of 54 millibars in just 36 hours, a rate typically seen in only 4% of tropical cyclones in the Western Pacific. Within 72 hours of formation, Fung-wong's maximum sustained winds accelerated from 85 miles per hour to 185 miles per hour, transforming a moderate tropical storm into a Category 5 super typhoon. But it was not just the wind speed that concerned forecasters, it was the sheer size. At 1,800 kilometers wide, Fung-wong became one of the largest storms ever recorded in the Western Pacific, spanning nearly 2/3 of the Philippine archipelago. Dr. Esperanza said when we saw its dimensions on satellite, we knew this was not just another typhoon. The circulation pattern extended from Batanes in the north to Mindanao in the south. Its moisture field was absorbing water vapor from both the South China Sea and the Philippine Sea simultaneously. While Fung-wong's size and strength were remarkable, what made it truly catastrophic was its timing. The Philippines had barely begun recovery operations from Typhoon Fung-wong, which had devastated the Central Islands less than a week earlier. For centuries, the Philippines has weathered approximately 20 major storms per year. The country's river systems, especially the Cagayan, the largest watershed in the country, had absorbed countless typhoons without catastrophic flooding. Engineers designed flood defences based on 500-year historical data, confident that the 9-metre critical level at Buntun Bridge represented the absolute worst-case scenario. But Fung-wong shattered every assumption in Philippine disaster management. When it made landfall in Aurora Province at 9:10 p.m. on November 9th, something unprecedented occurred. Instead of the gradual river rise expected over 24 to 48 hours, water levels in the Cagayan River Basin spiked to 9.9 meters in under 8 hours. Dr. James Montoya, a hydrological engineer from the University of the Philippines, described the phenomenon in stark terms. The river did not flood, it exploded. Here is what made Fung-wong catastrophic. It was not the first disaster. 5 days earlier, Typhoon Fung-wong had already devastated central Philippines, killing 232 people and overwhelming every emergency response system. Drainage infrastructure across multiple provinces was clogged with debris. Emergency shelters were at capacity with displaced families. Rescue equipment and personnel were deployed hundreds of miles away, still conducting recovery operations from the first typhoon. When Fung-wong struck, the Philippines was operating with compromised flood defences and exhausted emergency resources. According to Bernardo Rafaelito Alejandro, the fourth of the Office of Civil Defence, "We were fighting a Category 5 super typhoon with equipment designed for a Category 3. Our resources were already stretched beyond capacity. The timing could not have been worse." The country's reservoirs were already at 90% capacity from Kalmegi's rainfall. Soil across the northern provinces was completely saturated. Landslides had altered natural drainage patterns in mountainous regions. In disaster management, we typically design systems with a 30-day recovery window between major events, explained Dr. Elena Santos of the International Rice Research Institute. When that window collapses to just 5 days, the mathematical models that underpin all our flood control systems simply break down. The most vulnerable system was the Cagayan River Basin, a sprawling 27,281 square kilometre watershed spanning Isabela, Cagayan, Quirino, and Nueva Vizcaya provinces. As the country's largest river system, it had historically served as a reliable flood control mechanism, channeling excess water safely to the sea. But that was before the 1-2 punch of Kalmegi and Fung-wong. 3 days after Fung-wong passed, hydrologists made a chilling discovery. Using satellite data and river sensors deployed throughout northern Luzon, they traced the exact sequence of system failures across the Cagayan River Basin. The flooding did not happen randomly. It followed a pattern, a cascade of failures that amplified the destruction exponentially. Here is how the cascade worked. Fung-wong's massive size meant it dumped water simultaneously across multiple watersheds, feeding into the Cagayan River system. The smaller Chico River, a tributary in the northern highlands, overflowed first, sending a surge of excess water moved downstream toward the main Cagayan River. That initial surge, combined with Fung-wong's direct rainfall over the central basin, pushed the Cagayan River to capacity. When the main river system failed, smaller tributaries backed up like clogged arteries, creating flash floods that hit 132 villages within hours. Dr. Santos recalled that it was like watching hydraulic dominoes. Each failure triggered the next, creating a compounding effect far beyond what any single typhoon should have produced. The most alarming aspect of the cascade was its timing. In previous disasters, emergency managers had 12 to 24 hours between the start of heavy rainfall and major flooding. This time, the interval collapsed to just 4 to 6 hours in many locations. Dr. Chawalit Chantarapraset from the Philippines, flood, forecasting and warning system, explained that when multiple river systems fail simultaneously, traditional evacuation protocols become useless. Our entire emergency response framework is built on the assumption that disasters unfold sequentially, not simultaneously. This was the deadly blind spot in Philippine flood control. The infrastructure was built for sequential disasters, not compound ones. The Department of Public Works and Highways had completed numerous flood control projects across the region over the past decade. Dr. Montoya explained that these systems were designed with a 30-day recovery window between major storm events. The assumption was that rivers would have time to drain, reservoirs would have time to release water gradually, and emergency teams would have time to clear debris. When Fung-wong arrived just 127 hours after Kalmegi, that critical recovery window collapsed. Drainage channels were still clogged with debris. Dams were already at capacity, soil was fully saturated, and critically, emergency personnel were exhausted from the previous disaster response. Climate data reveals a terrifying trend. According to NOAA, a Pacific climate analysis, the average time between Category 4 plus typhoons in the Western Pacific has decreased from 45 days in the 2000s to just 12 days in the 20s. When engineers design flood defences, they calculate for 100-year storms, disasters so severe they statistically occur once per century, but virtually no flood control system in the Philippines or anywhere in the world was designed for 250-year storms hitting within a week. This phenomenon is what scientists call compound loading, where stressed systems fail at lower thresholds than their design specifications. Dr. Montoya explained it is like hitting a cracked windshield. The first impact creates fractures, the second shatters everything, even if that second impact would normally be absorbed. The compound loading effect was most visible in the failure of Tuguegarao City's flood defences. The city, located along the Cagayan River, had recently completed a 700 million pesos flood control project designed to withstand water levels up to 9 meters at the critical Buntun Bridge measuring point. During Calmegi, the river reached 8.7 meters, stressed but holding. When Fung-wong arrived less than a week later, the system failed catastrophically at just 7.9 meters, well below its design threshold. Dr. Montoya said the mathematical models simply do not account for this. We design systems with a built-in recovery period. When that period collapses from 30 days to less than 6 days, you get cascading failures that no existing model predicts. The data revealed something equally troubling. The rivers responded differently the second time around. During Fung-wong, water levels rose faster, spread wider, and drained more slowly than during Calmegi, even in areas that received less total rainfall. The reason was mechanical. Natural drainage systems were already clogged. Man-made drainage systems were damaged, and the soil was completely saturated. When water has nowhere to go, it creates new pathways, often through populated areas. If compound disasters are becoming the new normal, every major river city on Earth has a potential time bomb ticking beneath its streets. Flood defences in Bangkok, Jakarta, Hanoi, and Mumbai were all designed using the same single disaster assumption that failed in the Philippines. World Bank infrastructure analysis shows that approximately 80% of flood protection systems globally operate on 30-plus day assumptions, day recovery windows. When those assumptions collapse, you get cascading failures across entire regions within hours. Gustavo Gonzalez, United Nations resident and humanitarian coordinator in the Philippines, said, "What we are witnessing is a fundamental mismatch between our infrastructure design philosophy and the new climate reality. Our systems were built for a world where disasters politely wait their turn. That world no longer exists." The economic implications extend far beyond the immediate destruction. Fung-wong's $41.6 million in direct damage does not capture the long-term economic cascade. When river systems fail, they do not just flood homes. They destroy supply chains, cripple transportation networks, and trigger food shortages across entire regions. The Philippines supplies approximately 15% of Southeast Asia's rice exports. Fung-wong destroyed 460 hectares of farmland during harvest season, creating ripple effects that will impact food security from Vietnam to Malaysia in the coming months. And this was just one storm hitting one country. Perhaps most terrifying is the warning system breakdown. Early warning systems are built for predictable, gradually unfolding disasters. When rivers explode instead of gradually rising, there is no time for evacuation protocols. Residents in 132 villages had minutes, not hours, to reach safety. Emergency management agencies worldwide are now grappling with an uncomfortable truth. The disasters we are preparing for may not be the disasters we will face. Dr. Esperanza from Pagasa does not mince words. Compound disasters are not anomalies anymore. They are the pattern. Climate scientists across the Pacific region now agree that back-to-back storm sequences will become increasingly common as ocean temperatures rise and atmospheric patterns destabilize. The Philippine experience with Kalmegi and Fung-wong is not a fluke. It is a preview of our climate future. In response, Pagasa is revising its entire flood forecasting system. The Japan International Cooperation Agency has accelerated the implementation of a new 362 million pesos Cagayan River Basin flood forecasting and warning system. The system includes a network of telemetered rainfall and water level monitoring gauges, X-band radar stations, and a dedicated operations center. But technology alone is not enough. Dr. Jerry Bagtasa from the University of the Philippines advocates for fundamental changes to infrastructure design philosophy. We need to stop thinking about single disaster resilience and start designing for compound events. That means larger drainage capacity. The region needs distributed water storage systems and evacuation protocols that account for simultaneous failures. Japan has pioneered some potential solutions with its massive underground water storage facilities, essentially multi-level basements that can temporarily store excess floodwater. Similar proposals exist for Manila, but progress has been slow. The Department of Public Works and Highways and JYCA have unveiled an updated flood control master plan for the Cagayan River Basin. The plan includes 3 cut-off channels in Tuguegarao, San Isidro and Gabet, and river improvement works in the Magapit section of the lower Cagayan River. But the unanswered questions remain. What happens when compound disasters hit regions with even less preparation time? The Philippines had 5 days between catastrophes. What if the next sequence allows only hours? And perhaps most sobering, if river systems can cascade into failure this quickly, what other infrastructure networks are operating on the same false assumptions? River cities from the Amazon to the Yangtze are built on the same engineering principles that failed in northern Luzon. The next compound disaster could happen anywhere water meets civilization. As climate patterns become more volatile, we are not just facing bigger storms, we are facing smarter ones. Disasters that strike before we recover, exploit our weakest moments, and turn our own infrastructure against us. Because when nature does not follow the rules we designed our defences around, every city becomes an experiment in survival. The only question left, when the rivers near you reach their breaking point, will your city be ready for the new reality, or will it join the 132 villages that learned too late what happens when water stops waiting its turn? Subscribe to Earth Attacks now to explore the hidden patterns revealing what is happening to our planet. When disasters stop following the rules, knowledge becomes your only defense. Hit that notification bell because next time the breaking point might be in your backyard.